You don't have a reservation here. This area is for hotel guests only. I'm going to need you to leave." The words landed in the middle of the lobby, like something dropped from a great height. Aldous Beaumont did not move. He stood near the front desk of the Hargrove Grand, 41 floors of polished marble and curated silence in the heart of Chicago's Gold Coast, with his hands in the pockets of a dark grey hoodie and a worn canvas duffel bag resting at his feet. His face was calm. His breathing was even. He looked like a man who had been asked to wait before and knew how to do it without showing the cost. Standing across the desk was Kevin Marsh, 32, front desk supervisor, 6 months into a job he wore like armor. Kevin had the kind of confidence that came not from experience but from uniform. The fitted burgundy blazer, the gold name tag, the practiced authority of someone who had learned that a firm voice in the right lobby could feel like law. "Sir," Kevin said again, louder, this time enunciating each word with the patience of someone who believed the problem was comprehension. "The Hargrove Grand does not permit non-guests in the lobby without a reservation or an escort. I'm going to ask you one more time." Aldous looked at him, not past him, not through him, at him with the kind of attention that made people fidget. "I have a reservation," Aldous said. Kevin's expression did not change. His lips pressed together in something that almost resembled a smile. "Under what name?" "Beaumont. Aldous Beaumont." Kevin turned to his screen with the slow confidence of someone who already knew what he would not find. His fingers moved across the keyboard. The lobby was quiet behind them. Soft piano drifting from somewhere near the bar. The muted sound of a luggage cart crossing marble. A woman in a white coat glancing up from a leather chair by the window. Kevin studied the screen. His jaw tightened, then he looked back up. "I don't see anything under that name." Aldous held his gaze. "Check again." "Sir, I have checked." Kevin placed both hands flat on the desk. "Our system is very accurate. If a reservation existed, it would appear." "It exists," Aldous said. "It's under the Beaumont Group. Corporate account. Suite 1204. Something moved behind Kevin's eyes. Not recognition. Something closer to calculation. Suite 1204 was the signature penthouse suite. 1,800 square feet on the top floor. A suite that cost more per night than Kevin made in 2 weeks. The kind of suite booked by visiting CEOs, foreign dignitaries, the kind of guests who arrived in black cars with assistants walking ahead of them. Not men in grey hoodies carrying canvas bags. Kevin let the silence sit for a moment longer than necessary. "I don't see a corporate account under that name either." Aldous did not raise his voice. He did not reach for his phone. He simply said, "Then you're looking in the wrong place." The woman in the white coat by the window, her name was Dr. Priya Okonkwo, 44, a cardiologist from Johns Hopkins who had flown in for a medical conference, lowered her journal. She had been watching from the moment Kevin's voice first rose above the lobby's quiet register. She had heard that tone before, in hospitals, in parking structures, in conference rooms where credentials were asked for twice, then 3 times, from some people and not from others. She did not put her journal down, but her eyes stayed on the desk. Behind Kevin, a second desk agent, a younger woman named Rosa, 26, 3 weeks into the job, glanced at her supervisor, then at the screen in front of her. Something about the name was pulling at her memory. She had seen it in a briefing last week, a VIP arrival notification. But Kevin was already talking again. "Sir, without a verifiable reservation, I cannot allow you access to the upper floors or the guest lounge. I'm sure you understand. This is standard procedure." "It is not standard procedure," Aldous said, "to refuse to verify a reservation before denying it." Kevin's chin lifted slightly. "I have verified it. You typed a name into a search field and told me what you didn't find. That is not verification." A man sitting at a high-top table near the bar. Warren Albright, 55. A commercial real estate developer from Atlanta who had been scrolling his phone, looked up at that. He had a thick gold watch, and the easy posture of someone accustomed to being listened to. He watched Kevin, then the man in the hoodie, then back at Kevin. His phone didn't move, but his thumb stopped scrolling. Kevin stepped slightly to the side of the desk, so his body blocked some of the view from the lobby. It was a small movement, territorial. "I think," he said, dropping his voice in the way people do when they want to appear reasonable while meaning the opposite. "It would be easier for everyone if you stepped outside while we sorted this out. You can wait on the steps, and I'll call you in if we locate anything." Aldous looked at him for a long moment. "You want me to wait outside," he said, "just while we verify. You haven't verified anything yet, and you want me to wait outside." The repetition was deliberate, not angry, just precise, the way a surgeon marks the site before the first incision. Kevin's jaw shifted. "Sir, I'm trying to be accommodating." "No," Aldous said. "You are trying to move me where I am less visible." The lobby went a shade quieter. The piano kept playing. A bellman near the revolving door found something to look at on the ceiling. Rosa's hand hovered over her keyboard. She typed 2 letters into her own terminal. Then stopped. Then typed again. An older couple checking in at the far end of the desk. Henry and Louise Davenport, retired schoolteachers from Cincinnati, paused their conversation with the third agent and looked over without trying to look like they were looking over. Kevin folded his hands. "I understand you're frustrated." "I am not frustrated," Aldous said. The words came out flat and clean as a ruled line. "I am patient. I have been patient. I am asking you to do your job." Something in Kevin's posture shifted, not back exactly, but sideways. The kind of shift that happens when a person realizes the confrontation is not going the way they expected and hasn't decided yet what to do about that. "I am doing my job," Kevin said. "Then do it accurately." Warren Albright set his phone face down on the table. He had been in enough rooms to know when something was happening, even when the room was pretending it wasn't. Rosa pulled up a second window on her screen. Her eyes moved across it twice. Then she went very still. Aldous reached into the front pocket of his hoodie and removed a slim, matte black card. He placed it on the marble counter without drama. It sat there like a period at the end of a sentence. Kevin looked at it, did not pick it up. "That's a business card," Kevin said. "Yes, that doesn't constitute." "Read it," Aldous said. Kevin's nostrils moved. He picked up the card with 2 fingers, the way one handles something whose origin is uncertain. He read it. His expression stayed controlled for approximately 3 seconds. Then the color shifted, first in the neck, then the face. The card read, "Aldous Beaumont, Founder and Chief Executive Officer, Beaumont Capital Holdings, Hospitality and Real Estate Division." And below that, in smaller print, the logo of the parent company that owned a controlling interest in 6 hotel groups across North America, one of which was the Hargrove Collection, which meant the Hargrove Grand, which meant this building, this lobby, this marble floor Kevin Marsh was standing on. Kevin's hand lowered slightly. Rosa found her voice before he did. "Mr. Marsh," she said, her voice careful and very even, "I pulled the reservation, Suite 1204, the Beaumont Group account. It's been confirmed for 3 nights. VIP notation. Filed last Tuesday." Kevin's mouth opened, the piano kept playing. Warren Albright picked his phone back up, but this time he turned on the camera. Dr. Okonkwo finally set her journal on the seat beside her. Kevin looked at the card again, then at his screen, then at Aldous. His face was doing complicated things it didn't have the training to hide. "Mr. Beaumont," he started. "It's fine," Aldous said. It was not an acceptance of an apology. It was a signal that the conversation was moving forward now, with or without one. Kevin set the card down gently, very differently from how he had picked it up. "I apologize for the delay. We'll get you checked in immediately." "No," Aldous said. Kevin blinked. "Before we do anything else," Aldous said, "I'd like to speak with your general manager." Rosa was already reaching for the phone. The general manager of the Hargrove Grand was a woman named Sandra Chu. 23 years in luxury hospitality, the kind of professional who had navigated everything from celebrity meltdowns to structural emergencies with a voice that never climbed past conversational. She walked out of the elevator with the unhurried speed of someone who had already assessed the situation from the security feed on her office monitor. She stopped when she saw Aldous. Not with surprise, with recognition, and something that looked like controlled dread. "Mr. Beaumont," she said, and the way she said it was different from Kevin's way of saying it, different from someone reading a name off a card. She said it the way you say the name of someone who owns part of your future. Aldous turned to face her. "Miss Chu," he said, "thank you for coming down." Sandra Chu moved to the desk and stood slightly in front of Kevin, not pushing him out but placing herself between him and further damage. "I've just been reviewing the security log. I want to apologize personally for what happened. There was a failure in our verification process. There was a failure in judgment," Aldous said. "The process exists. It was not followed." Sandra's expression did not flinch, but her hands, clasped in front of her, pressed together slightly harder. "You're right. That's an important distinction." Kevin stood very still beside her. His burgundy blazer looked different now, less like armor. Warren Albright was recording from his high-top table, phone tilted just enough to catch the desk without being obvious. His audio was picking up clearly in the quiet lobby. Dr. Okonkwo walked toward the desk, not with urgency, just with the deliberate purpose of a woman who had decided that distance was no longer appropriate. "I saw what happened," she said to Sandra Chu. "From the beginning, he showed identification. He gave a name. He was asked to go wait outside." Sandra looked at her. "Yes, ma'am. I understand." "I'm not sure you do yet," Dr. Okonkwo said, and there was nothing rude in her voice. Just precision. The kind that came from decades of telling people difficult truths about things that were wrong with them, because understanding would have looked different 10 minutes ago. Aldous glanced at her. A brief look, something in it that was not soft but was close to grateful. Henry Davenport from the far end of the desk let out a slow breath. His wife Louise touched his arm. "Say something," she murmured. He stood up straighter. "I've been coming to this hotel for 11 years, he said, louder than he'd intended. "And I saw this gentleman arrive calmly, speak politely, and get treated like a problem before anyone checked a single thing." Kevin's hands pressed flat against the counter again, but this time the gesture had no authority in it. It was just somewhere to put them. Sandra Chu turned to Kevin. Her voice was still controlled, but it had taken on a quality like steel covered in velvet. You could feel what was under it even if you couldn't see it. "Mr. Marsh, please step back to the office." Kevin opened his mouth. "Now, please." He went. Rosa exhaled. She didn't realize how long she'd been holding it. Aldous watched Kevin disappear through the inner door, then turned back to Sandra. "I want to be clear about something," he said. "This is not about an apology from one employee." Sandra held his gaze. "I know. A man stood in your lobby for 12 minutes, Aldous said, with a valid reservation, a verifiable identity, and a calm demeanor. And the first instinct of your front desk supervisor was to move him outside before checking a single record." He paused. "The question I have for you is, what in the culture of this hotel made that feel like the right thing to do?" The lobby was very quiet. Warren Albright's thumb stayed on the record button. Rosa stared at her screen without reading it. Sandra Chu took one breath. "That is a question I intend to answer fully, and not quietly." Aldous said, "Make sure you don't." He reached into his duffel bag, the worn canvas bag that Kevin had assessed and found wanting, and removed a tablet. He opened it and turned it to face Sandra. On the screen was an email thread. Corporate compliance. An audit authorization. Already signed, already dated. Time-stamped 40 minutes ago. "I was already here in a review capacity before I walked in," Aldous said. "This property was flagged after 2 similar guest complaints in the last quarter. I wanted to see the process without announcement. He let her read the screen. Now I have. Sandra Chu's face did not break, but it became very still, the way things become still when they are absorbing something permanent. I'd like to set up a meeting with your department heads this afternoon, Aldous said. Every senior member of the guest services team. I want the full orientation materials, the complaint logs from the last 6 months, and the onboarding documentation for everyone currently on the desk, Oppa. Of course, Sandra said. Her voice was steady, but thin. And I want the security footage preserved from today, beginning 1 hour before my arrival. Rosa raised her hand slightly, as if in a classroom. I already flagged it, she said. When I found the reservation, I flagged the footage. Aldous looked at her. What's your name? Rosa Villanueva. How long have you been at this property? 3 weeks. He nodded, once. Something about the nod meant more than it looked like. Thank you, Rosa. She nodded back and looked at her screen to keep from showing how much it meant. Doctor. Okonkwo had come to stand a few feet back from the desk. She was not part of the conversation, but she was witness to it, and she made no pretense of otherwise. When Aldous glanced at her again, she said, For what it's worth. He never raised his voice. No, Aldous said. I know. That matters, she said. Because in my experience, not raising your voice in a situation like this costs more than people understand. You are absorbing what is being done to you, and you are choosing your response, and that takes something from a person. She looked at him steadily. I just wanted to say that someone noticed. The lobby went quiet in a different way than it had been quiet before. Not the polished, managed silence of expensive spaces, but the kind that happens when something true has been said out loud, and the room is deciding what to do with it. Aldous looked at Dr. Okonkwo for a moment, without speaking. It does cost something, he said. Warren Albright stopped recording. He'd gotten what the moment required. He was not going to make more of it than that. Henry and Louise Davenport stood by the far desk without checking in anymore, not obstructing anything, just present. Witnesses the way ordinary people become witnesses when they decide that looking away is no longer something they're willing to do. Sandra Chu turned to the full desk, to Rosa and the other agents. Effective now, no guest is to be redirected or asked to wait outside before full verification is completed. If there is any question about a reservation, a supervisor calls up the record in person. The guest is not asked to leave the building. She said it as a policy, as something that should have already been true and wasn't. Understood? Nods quick, ashamed. Aldous zipped his duffel and slung it over one shoulder. I'll check in now, he said. Rosa had the key cards ready. As she slid them across the counter, she kept her eyes down for a second, then looked up. Suite 1204, Mr. Beaumont. Elevators on your right. 32nd floor. She paused. The view is really something. Something eased in Aldous's face. Not a smile exactly, more like the face of a man allowing himself to arrive somewhere he'd always been entitled to be. Thank you, Rosa. He walked toward the elevator with the same unhurried pace he had carried since he walked through the revolving door. The canvas duffel moved at his side. The lobby watched him go. Kevin Marsh was still in the back office when the elevator doors closed behind Aldous Beaumont. He was sitting in a chair with his elbows on his knees, staring at a spot on the carpet, replaying 12 minutes of his own voice in his head. He had been so certain. The certainty was the part that disturbed him most now. How clean and immediate it had been. How it had not needed any evidence. How it had walked in with him the moment he'd looked up and decided, before anything was said, before anything was checked, before any of the facts of the situation had arrived to complicate the story he had already written. He had been trained. He had the scripts. He knew the words. Verification, standard procedure, guest protocol. He had used them all, and every single one of them had been a costume for something he hadn't wanted to name. Sandra Chu came in 20 minutes later. She sat across from him without preamble. You know what happened, she said. Kevin looked up. I made a mistake. What was the mistake? He was quiet for a moment. I decided before I checked. Yes, Sandra let that sit. And what did you decide? He didn't answer for long enough that the silence answered for him. Kevin, she said, I've been in this industry long enough to know that bias doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it wears your own common sense, wears your instincts, feels like judgment when it is something older and less examined than that. She folded her hands. But the impact of what you did today is the same, regardless of what it felt like inside you. A man with every right to be in this lobby was treated as a problem because of how he looked. That is the record. Kevin's jaw moved. Is my job. That's a conversation for HR and for tomorrow, Sandra said. Right now I need you to sit here and actually understand what happened. Not what you intended, what happened. He looked at her for a long time. Then he nodded. Once. And for the first time, it was not the nod of a man performing regret. It was something slower and more honest. In the lobby, Dr. Okonkwo returned to her chair by the window. She picked up her journal, but she didn't open it. She sat looking at the elevator doors for a moment. She thought about every conference she'd ever walked into where someone had checked her lanyard twice before waving her through. Every hospital wing where a nurse had asked if she was lost. Every first impression that had required her to override it with credentials before it would correct itself. Power doesn't always announce itself, she thought, and neither does the absence of it. But people decide quickly which one they're looking at. She opened her journal and wrote that down. Warren Albright sent the video to 3 people he trusted. Not to post, he wasn't that kind of person, just to a friend who ran a hospitality industry newsletter. A colleague in corporate real estate who talked about workplace culture more than anyone else Warren knew. And his daughter, who was 26 and had just started a management position at a hotel in Nashville. He wrote her a short message alongside it. Watch how he never loses his composure. Then ask yourself what that costs. Then ask yourself what your job is in a room when you see it happening. His daughter called him back 40 minutes later. She didn't say much, but she said, I understand now what you've been trying to tell me. Henry and Louise Davenport finally checked in. As Rosa processed their key cards, Louise leaned slightly on the counter. That man, Louise said quietly. Is he going to be all right? Rosa looked up. Mr. Beaumont? She thought about the reservation that had been in the system since Tuesday. The VIP flag, the audit authorization on his tablet. The way he'd said thank you to her like he meant the 2 words separately, not just as a phrase. Yes, ma'am, Rosa said. I think he'll be all right. Louise nodded. Good, she said. He deserved better than what he got for the first 12 minutes. He did, Rosa said. She meant it as a professional acknowledgement. But it came out as something else. Simpler, truer. The kind of sentence that doesn't need a job title or a uniform to be correct. Upstairs, on the 32nd floor, the elevator opened onto a short hallway with wide windows that looked out over Lake Michigan. The water was flat and silver. In the late afternoon, the horizon a long, clean line where the sky met the cold. Aldous Beaumont set his duffel bag down inside Suite 1204. He sat on the edge of the wide bed and looked at the view for a while without doing anything. His phone had several messages. His assistant had flagged the audit report for next steps. Corporate compliance had acknowledged receipt of his initial notes. Legal had a question about the framework for the guest complaint review. He would answer all of them. But not yet. He sat with the afternoon light coming through the glass and the lake going on forever beyond it, and let himself feel what 12 minutes in a lobby actually cost. Not the inconvenience, not the process, the thing underneath it. The old, familiar weight of being assessed by the wrong criteria before the right ones were even consulted. The specific exhaustion of having to remain composed when composure was the only tool available that would not be used against you. He had built things, negotiated things, walked into rooms where no one expected someone who looked like him to own the table. He had learned, early, that maintaining his calm in those moments was both his strength and a quiet sacrifice, that every situation like this one asked him to spend something: patience, dignity, the ordinary ease of moving through the world unexamined. And he paid it, because the alternative was to let the story someone else had written about him become the one the room believed. He paid it today, too, but today someone had said out loud that they noticed. That was not nothing. He pulled out his tablet and opened a new document. At the top he typed a heading: Hargrove Grand, Audit Findings and Recommendations. Below it he began to write, not with anger, with precision, the way change actually begins, not in a moment of confrontation, but in what comes after, when the room has gone quiet and the people responsible for the room have to decide what kind of place they want it to be. He wrote for a long time. The lake held its color. The sky turned the slow gold of late afternoon. Aldous Beaumont remained in Suite 1204, exactly where he had been entitled to be from the beginning.